The LG G4 is an OLED TV. The Sony Bravia 9 is a mini LED TV. Now, I have made a comparison in the past between mini LED and OLED, but a lot has changed since I have made those comparisons. Now, a lot remains true with LCD versus OLED, so I do still recommend watching those videos to go over the basics, but there are a few things here that are new to the comparison, like OLED TVs getting significantly brighter than they have been in the past. Now, the Bravia 9 has a bit of a trick up its sleeve this year, and that is the new backlight technology. And it is also brighter than all the OLED TVs that are available on the market. So, is this going to be enough to close the gap with OLED TV? Well, hopefully you have a clear answer on that by the end of the video. And speaking of the end of the video, make sure you stick around till the very end where I will give you my buying advice on both of these TVs. So let's start with some of the things that definitely stick out once you turn the TVs on and put them side by side. So the first thing that happens when you turn on these TVs and they are next to each other, you will notice a huge difference in contrast. The detailed contrast difference in most scenes are very noticeable, and if you do not see this when you do the comparison on your own, if you ever do, then I would recommend taking a trip to the optometrist right away. It is a huge difference. This cannot be overstated. You will see the difference. But when it comes down to the TVs being on their own, is the Bravia 9 contrast good enough for most? It can very much look similar to an OLED TV with contrast in mind. It's not until you put a OLED TV on next to it where you will notice the difference. Another thing you can notice is sharpness, clarity, and depth. The G4 has significantly better three-dimensionality than the Bravia 9 when they are side by side. But the Bravia 9 on its own in this category is very good. It is worth noting that the G4 actually stuck out in this category over other OLED TVs that I put it next to this year as well. And the reason why I say this is because the Bravia 9 is definitely not a slouch in this category. It has really powerful tools available to you that are on by default, like reality creation, that can enhance the clarity of your image on the screen. And I think that the Bravia 9 does such a fantastic job at showing you image clarity. It is just one of those things where in this category, comparing it to an OLED seems to be somewhat unfair due to the technology differences. On the topic of that, we got to talk about the light control because the new backlight technology in the Bravia 9 is really fantastic. The blooming control on this TV is better than most mini LED TVs that I've seen in the past. So it is something that, yes, you will see blooming. It's not going to be blooming free, but for the most part, this shouldn't be a huge issue like it has been in some mini LED TVs in the past. However, I do want to note that if you are sitting off angle, you will notice blooming far more often because blooming is prevalent at an off angle position. That said, I would say just stick to an OLED TV if viewing angle is a concern to you. Now let's talk about a significant advantage that the Bravia 9 has over the G4. That is sound quality. The Bravia 9 just has tremendous speakers for a TV, and the G4 has a very lackluster TV speaker experience. The Bravia 9 has up-firing speakers that will fill the whole entire room with sound. Now we have to talk about brightness, because when it comes down to brightness in HDR, both of these TVs can look fairly similar most of the time. They often do trade blows, and it's really not until you watch content that pushes beyond what the G4 is capable of where you see the Bravia 9 pull ahead, or in high APL scenes. I also want to note that if you are somebody who watches in vivid or standard mode, the Bravia 9 will give you a better experience there too, as the HDR vivid mode on the Bravia 9 is one of the brightest eye-searing modes I've ever seen. It actually hurts my eyes to look at. But I know some of you are really into this mode, so it is worth mentioning. This will also be the case in standard dynamic range, pretty much the way that you would watch your cable TV or streaming services that are in SDR. So compared to the G4, it cannot get to that brightness level for standard dynamic range. The G4 is bright for an OLED TV in SDR, but it does not get close to where the Bravia 9 can go for SDR. Now, really quick, before we move on to movie and game mode, I want to ask you guys if you are enjoying this video to please hit the like button and consider subscribing for future content. Thank you guys so much for your support. Let's get on with the comparison. All right, so watching movies on the Bravia 9 and the LG G4 is a really great experience overall. You really can't go wrong with either TV in this regard. They do it very well. However, if you want more contrast, of course, like we were talking about, you are going to want to go with the LG G4 if you admire that for your movies. When you're looking at the Bravia 9 next to the LG G4 in darker scenes, you can see a difference. There are really challenging scenes for the Bravia 9 where you will see it struggle just a little bit. And if it's not next to an OLED, it might not be as noticeable, but even when the Bravia 9 was the only TV on, I did notice those challenging dark scenes. They really did create problems for the Bravia 9 at times. And sometimes I noticed there was blooming in the black bars for all different types of aspect ratios. Now, it is worth noting that I am comparing the 65-inch Bravia 9, and this could be a little bit less of an issue on the larger sizes as they have more dimming zones, and as you go up in size, you usually do get better panel quality. 85-inch is going to give you the best panel that is available for the Bravia 9. On the topic of upscaling, they do a really good job upscaling content. Both TVs really do this. But when it comes down to low bitrate streaming, the Bravia 9 will be a better experience overall. That's not to say that the LG G4 is bad by any means. Sony is just really good with low bitrate streaming in mind. Alright, let's talk about game mode. And it's really not tied to game mode because when it comes down to the Bravia 9 and game mode, I don't see a significant drop off from game mode to outside of game mode. It's really just how games perform on an LCD TV. You will see backlight fluctuations in a lot of games, especially darker ones. I've noticed light trails. Again, I really do feel like this is mostly just an issue in darker games with a lot of light sources. You will see better HDR impact on the Bravia 9 than you will on the LG G4 in regards to brighter highlights. In regards to tiny specular highlights like stars in the sky, for example, you will notice that the Bravia 9 just does not do as well as the LG G4 in this category. And that's mostly due to the technology. It's also worth noting that the LG G4 is capable of 4K 144Hz PC gaming if you are having a compatible PC, where the Bravia 9 is only capable of 4K 120Hz. Now, there is one big advantage that the Bravia 9 has over the LG G4, and that's the ability to clean up things like color banding. You have access to smooth gradation in your game mode for the Bravia 9, whereas the LG G4, you have access to it, but it does not have any impact whatsoever. The setting just does not work in game mode. Those of you that like playing the Nintendo Switch at very high brightness levels or any standard dynamic range gaming, the Bravia 9 has once again another big advantage over the LG G4. Now, we already talked about SDR brightness being better on the Bravia 9, but when it comes down to gaming, there is a big advantage with SDR brightness in mind for game mode because LG G4 is locked to peak brightness off. You cannot change the peak brightness in SDR for your game mode. All right, so now let's talk about my buying advice and the overall value of these TVs. So if you look at the price tags, the 65-inch does seem fairly similar to the 65-inch of the LG G4. However, when we get into 75-inch versus 77, 75-inch becomes a better value than 77. If you wanted to get equivalent to the 85-inch, you'd have to be looking at the 83-inch, which is going to be more expensive than the 85-inch. So yeah, if you are really having a hard time deciding which one to get, value could be the tiebreaker here when it comes down to it. But the real tiebreaker should be this question that I ask you right now. What are you looking to get out of your TV? And what do you watch the most of? If you're somebody who finds themselves watching a lot of SDR broadcasts, whether that's sports, shows, or just really news channels, then maybe the Bravia 9 makes more sense. Because yes, you could still watch your occasional HDR movie and it'll look really fantastic, and you will get close to OLED level contrast that you've never seen before with a mini LED TV, without some of the OLED TV downsides. However, if you are in the category of I'm a previous OLED owner and I don't know if the contrast drop off is going to be worth it, then the G4 might make more sense over the Bravia 9 in that regard. I also think if you find yourself in the category of being a hardcore gamer, then the LG G4 just makes more sense over the Bravia 9 for a lot of different reasons. Not only the response time is going to be better on the LG G4, but you also won't run into those backlight issues that I described earlier. And if you are somebody who needs 144Hz gaming, the LG G4 will be the only one that offers that to you. Now, if you're more of a casual gamer, especially if you're somebody who plays in SDR, you play a lot on Nintendo Switch, the Bravia 9, it doesn't really get too much better than that. Now, of course, everybody will be different. I like to think of the differences between the two TVs as ice cream flavors. And I've made this analogy before when picking a TV, but it really is like that. It's going to depend on your viewing habits, the picture quality categories you're really into. This is a really tough decision for a lot of people, but I hope I've helped make this a clearer decision for most after watching this. And if you think that I've helped you, please consider buying your next TV on one of my affiliate links in the description below to support the channel. I'd love to hear what you guys are going to get in the comments, so please let me know that as well. If you guys want to keep watching videos on the Bravia 9 or the LG G4, check out this video right here. I think you'll like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.